The man, Noor, could never have imagined that despite having only one skill, counter, he might possess the potential to become the greatest adventurer. He practiced with a wooden sword, and within a year, he could deflect over 10 wooden rods simultaneously. 3 more years passed, and he evolved from deflecting 10 rods to 100. After a decade, he unwittingly reached the ability to parry thousands of rods at once. Yet Noor was completely unaware of his own strength. The sword technique he had honed over the years was considered the most rudimentary form of parrying, a skill everyone knew. Orphaned from a young age, he could only live at the bottom of society. This led Noor, who believed himself to be weak, to spend his days doing menial labor or helping neighbors find their lost cats, oblivious to the fact that his abilities had already surpassed those of the legendary sword saints. However, during an unexpected event, he accidentally unlocked his potential. What was thought to be a useless skill suddenly proved immensely powerful, allowing him to instantly kill the Minotaur King, a creature even the kingdom's nobility feared, right before everyone's eyes. In this era where adventurers were ranked, Noor was placed at the very lowest, F level. This was due to a special training facility known as the Training Ground, where people could choose from 6 different professions. Surprisingly, after undergoing training in all available professions, Noor failed to learn any skills deemed essential for adventurers, leading the Training Ground to categorize him as the weakest, F level. Despite this, Noor did not give up entirely. He humbly pleaded with the Guildmaster, hoping to be granted the title of adventurer. Fortunately, the Guildmaster agreed to his request and occasionally provided him with some tasks to sustain his life. Gradually, Noor discovered that aside from his defensive skills, which were deemed useless, other abilities could subtly change his life. For instance, the strength enhancement skill he learned at the warrior training facility allowed him to carry goods 5 times heavier than usual. Or the minor healing skill, considered so low level that it wouldn't even be used on dogs, helped alleviate his fatigue with continued use. Though he knew these skills were not practiced as diligently as his parrying, they always managed to help him at critical moments. Soon, Noor's task for the day was also drawing to a close. After his usual refusal of the supervisor's joking offer, he planned to head home to continue training his parrying skill. However, just as he was leaving, he caught a glimpse of a faint beam of light not far away. Someone was shouting for help, and at the same time, a gigantic bull appeared. Several royal guards were engaging it head-on, but they were no match for the Minotaur King and were swiftly cut down by its giant axe. Noor saw a girl in imminent danger and decisively used his stone-throwing skill. He hadn't thought to defeat the monster with this skill, merely hoping to divert its attention. Fortunately, the ploy worked, and the Minotaur King turned its focus to him. Just as the girl thought Noor was doomed, he cleverly dodged the attack, realizing that the enemy's strikes were not only heavy, but also fast. Even though he could parry, his sword was nearly knocked out of his hand. Noor didn't know how many times he could deflect such attacks, so he needed to find an opportunity to counterattack. It was then that Noor suddenly realized he didn't have any skills for counterattacking. What was he to do? Suddenly, Noor's thoughts were interrupted by the Minotaur King's next attack, which was aimed at the very spot where the girl was standing. Using his strength enhancement at the last moment and a parry, the cost was his sword being shattered. Was he going to die here? As he looked at the broken sword in his hand and used his parry, the weapon he deflected decapitated the monster. Noor had reached his limit, and he doubted himself. Despite years of training, he was left in such a sorry state by a mere town's bull. How could he possibly adventure around the world? The girl witnessed this scene, and just as she was preparing to thank him, Noor had disappeared without a trace. Looking at his trembling hands, Noor knew he needed more training. Noor had never expected that he would accidentally save a princess who had been imprisoned. Upon hearing the news, the king personally bestowed upon him an epic greatsword, simply because Noor was unaware that in order to kill Celia, the enemy nation had summoned Milo Talos, a monster from the abyss that even S-rank adventurers feared. However, Noor ended up beheading the monster with a single strike. Overnight, rumors spread throughout the streets. A mysterious figure wielding a rusty iron sword had slain Milo Talos in just 2.5 seconds. After the battle, the prince dispatched an elite troop to investigate, but they ended up being mistaken by Noor for perverts and shaken off. When he returned to the guild master was worried, thinking something had happened to Noor since a rare monster had appeared near the construction site where Noor had been working the previous night. Noor explained that he was too tired from completing a mission yesterday and had gone home, stopping by to clean his grandmother's drain on the way, which is why he was so dirty. Relieved, the guild master mentioned that the monster last night was extremely terrifying, noting that even he, a former A-rank adventurer, would not have escaped had he encountered it. Fortunately, it was slain by a mysterious man. Noor inwardly sighed in relief that he had only encountered a cow. After settling his payment for yesterday's work, Noor was about to accept a new mission when a voice suddenly stopped him from behind. It was the girl he had saved the day before, which almost scared the guildmaster to death, clearly aware of the girl's identity. The girl sought out Noor to express her gratitude for saving her life, but since the place was crowded, she hoped to speak with him privately outside. Hearing this, the guildmaster immediately intervened, cautioning Noor to be careful not to offend her due to her special status and to avoid drawing attention. The girl activated sound shield and concealment skills, making the nearby soldiers completely unaware of their presence. She apologized for using a remote sensing skill to find Noor and for taking him away while talking to the guildmaster. To repay Noor for saving her life, her father wanted to meet him and was prepared to use the family fortune to give him the sincerest thanks. However, Noor felt that defeating a cow in the town was nothing special, and that a simple thank you was more than enough. The girl was taken aback, insisting on giving Noor some benefits, but he really didn't need anything. Noor had never expected the girl to start crying as she spoke, even stating that she would stay by his side until he was willing to accept her thanks. Seeing the girl's relentless determination, Noor was reminded of his own childhood determination to become an adventurer, constantly pleading with his teacher to let him train. Thus, Noor also agreed, while stating that he would not accept an overly extravagant thank you. In the blink of an eye, the young girl had brought Noor to a massive mansion. It was then that Noor understood why the guild master had instructed him to mind his manners. The other party must be a wealthy family or nobility. The girl's name was Lindbergh Clays. Along the way, they encountered a female knight named Inez, who, upon learning that Noor was Lindbergh's lifesaver and was going to meet her father, took it upon herself to lead the way. Noor, mistaking her for a maid due to her armor, wondered how she managed to clean while dressed so heavily. However, for some reason, Noor felt that Inez was quite wary of him. They hadn't walked far before encountering a blonde knight. Seeing Noor behind Lindbergh, he must have assumed he was the formidable adventurer from the rumors, but judging by his attire, he seemed weak. Inez interrupted him and suggested they all head to the hall together, whispering that the more guards, the better. The blonde knight quickly understood that the unremarkable man in front of him was not as simple as he appeared. Meanwhile, in the hall, the king and his son Rain were discussing the imminent outbreak of war, as the neighboring country had violated a non-aggression treaty. The previously summoned Milo Taulos was part of their scheme to force the king to hand over the ownership of a labyrinth. If refused, more threats would follow. The war between the two countries had become inevitable. As everyone arrived in the hall, the knights all knelt down. Being from a remote area and not of noble birth, Noor was clueless about the etiquette for such an occasion and apologized in advance for any possible rudeness. However, this pleased the king, who didn't mind the lack of formalities and found it more comfortable to converse this way. The king once again thanked Noor. Without his intervention, his daughter might have been reincarnated by now. Noor, not overly concerned, thought that accepting the thanks meant he could soon go home to bathe and rest. But the king insisted that Noor could not leave empty-handed, offering him land or wealth, whatever he wished. Noor, however, wanted nothing. This puzzled the king, who then recalled that the kingdom possessed the world's oldest labyrinth, filled with rare treasures stored in the treasure hall. He decided to offer Noor half of the treasures stored there, but Noor still refused. Left with no choice, the king noticed the great sword behind him. Thus, he made a choice for Noor. The sword, though not very attractive and once used by the king himself, had become merely a decorative piece. Worried that Noor might refuse again, the king suggested that since he had retired many years ago, it would be better for the sword to be in Noor's hands rather than continue to lie dormant here. However, as soon as Noor grasped it, he felt an immense weight, and with his enhanced strength, he swung the sword, unleashing a powerful wave of energy. The king was surprised that Noor could wield the two-handed sword with just one hand. The king then made another request to Noor, asking him, if he didn't mind, to train Lindbergh. With recent unrest everywhere, it would be beneficial for her to learn by Noor's side. Confused, Noor felt he had little to teach, being weak himself, and believed such matters should be decided by the individuals concerned, feeling that parental interference was generally unwise. This amused the king, who decided to leave the decision up to Lindbergh herself. At this point, Noor bid farewell to the king. On his way back, Noor felt the greatsword in his hand. Such a heavy sword was perfect for training. Even the width of this greatsword was about the same as the drainage ditch at his grandmother's house. If used to clean the ditch, the efficiency would definitely increase significantly. The king might never know that Noor's ideas were so outlandish. It was at that moment that the blonde-haired man blocked Noor's path. His name was Gilbert, and he wanted to witness Noor's strength.